the massive amount of power that happens when a lightning bolt strikes and the way it excites the atoms in the air.
Just busts them right apart, yeah.
Right, to get the nitrogen, which is the most abundant element in our air. It's not oxygen, people. We're breathing in mostly nitrogen. All right. It's AJ again on the More Than Grass podcast, and I am back with Eric Putnam, BCMA, and we're going to talk not just about grass today, but about trees. Because when it comes to being the bee's knees with trees, Eric Putnam is the number one in town. Anyway, so Eric, you've been an arborist for 30 years or plus, right? But
certified arborist for 31-ish years. They're certified arborist.
Kind of so long he can't even remember, which is amazing for us because he has a log of so much experience and information that can help us move forward in a great way in the arboriculture industry and even the lawn care industry, because it's a big part that we don't pay attention to a lot in lawn care and in landscaping is usually, honestly, the most valuable part of your landscape is the tree, right?
Right. So I tell you what, I could ask you a very interesting question.
Go for it. Come on.
Right. Why do you think grass doesn't grow underneath trees?
So it's going to be a few reasons. Now, the basic reasons is yes, to some degree, sunlight really matters. For most varieties of grass, you don't get enough sunlight, you won't get grass. Another reason is a lot of times what I see is the root zone is so high in the soil profile, there's really no room for grass to grow anyway. But then the other thing you taught me about years ago is called allelopathy.
Allelopathy is the most important thing. It's probably 95% the reason why grass doesn't grow.
So I kind of would want to argue with you or debate with you on that, is that, again, shade factor. And over the years, what I've found a lost art, you could say, or a lost practice as we have gotten further into just being inundated with chemical crap on our lawns, landscapes, and trees, we have gotten away from practices of physically doing stuff versus I'm going to spray to treat X, Y, and Z. Okay, and here's where I'm going with this, is I have seen my father on every lawn we've ever lived at. Man, my dad lived a lot of places, right? When we were young, moving from here to here to here to, in the last, let's say 15 years now, he's lived in 3 different homes. Every single place my dad ever lived at, though, you know what we did? We brought in some freaking sand, okay? And people don't put sand on their lawns anymore, right? They barely even understand the value of top dressing. Okay. So we have a lot of erosion, you know, and so that's a factor, right? We have a ton of erosion. We got the roots coming up. Oh, what am I going to do? You can't treat erosion with a freaking chemical spray.
No.
Right?
No.
It's never going to happen.
So you know why the roots pop up to the surface?
No, I don't. Please tell me.
They are less dense than the soil. So if you can imagine a boat floating in the water, that's the reason they pop up.
So basically the soil is super compacted.
That or the soil type, because in areas where the soil is sandy or sandy loam, you don't have the problems. You only have that in gumbo areas.
Okay, so that goes back to people in that lost practice or the lost art of bringing in sand.
Yes.
Right?
You can bring the sand in. Eventually you can have enough of sand where that the roots won't poke above the sand. They'll only stay where the gumbo layer is.
And what I've seen a lot, and as I've tried to get better in my field, because as I'm sure you may know, I have never stopped trying stuff.
Got to be, man.
You know,
I mean, how many filaments did they try for the light bulb?
1,000, right?
Millions.
Something like that.
Millions of companies are that very interesting book. The book about the air, the alchemy of air.
Oh yeah.
How many hundreds of thousands of to get the catalyst to be able to to fix the
to
nitrogen.
get nitrogen from air.
Right.
So yeah,
That's crazy.
man. So you started listening to that.
I finished it. Yeah.
You finished it.
It's
Awesome.
it's actually a book that changed my life. So,
Okay.
I mean, there's a handful of books that have changed my life forever, and that's going to be one of them.
That makes me feel so proud, honestly, and excited that I got to be a person to introduce you to some information that you said is life changing. Because, like I said in our last podcast, you introduced me to information that was life changing.
The thing that I have the hardest time reconciling is that up until about 5 or 6 years ago, when I told everybody that the majority of the nitrogen was fixed from lightning, and they're like, no, it's not true, blah, 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 whatever. And then we find out that these guys from the 1800s knew that the nitrogen fixation came from lightning in 1800s. And yet here I am still today, 100 and something years later, being told that lightning does not fix nitrogen. So that's crazy.
Which I knew that, some years ago.
Right.
The massive amount of power that happens when a lightning bolt strikes and the way it excites the atoms in the air.
Just busts them right apart, yeah.
Right. To get the nitrogen, which is the most abundant element in our air. It's not oxygen, people. We're breathing in mostly nitrogen.
So back when I was younger and my mind was freer and cleaner and I didn't have all the stuff I have floating around in my mind that I do nowadays, when it would rain, everything would look greener and prettier. Well, now we know why it looks greener and prettier, because nitrogen, if it's applied in the right way, can affect a plant within hours. It can turn it green within hours.
Right.
Right. And that's coming from lightning. And that's why when you can water a tree with irrigation water, it doesn't do anything, or a plant, it doesn't do anything. But when the rain comes, then that plant's as green as it's ever been. So
and they all lift up, they all perk up.
Right. Yeah. The irrigation water doesn't do the same thing. It's because the amount of nitrogen that's actually in the rain water as it rains down.
Yeah. So I kind of, man, what he just told me about roots being less density than our clay soils, and that's why it's all above the ground, that just kind of hits me like a ton of bricks.
Well, and roots move in the ground, right? If a root is very rarely ever round, right? Because of the reaction would when a tree moves and twists and it's moving and breaking and damaging and injuring cells and stuff, then the roots grow out to be able to counteract it. So that actual movement in the soil, even though you can't really detect it, when it moves, then the soil kind of feels underneath it. Kind of like if you were to stand on a flat surface and throw sand around your feet, and then you would move your feet and then the sand would go underneath your,
right.
You know what I'm saying? So it fills in the voids that are left by the movement of the tree. And because the trees move everywhere, they're moving all the time, even though you can't visually percept it. And so that's what happens.
Well, it makes sense. Like any kind of cell growth and everything, it's happening every second. Right. But we don't see any of it, except for you grow a tree a year later, you notice it's a little different, or maybe you fed it a different way and you got some extra growth out of it, but it's like watching water boil, right?
So there's 2 more books that have changed my life.
Okay.
That I'll never look, and some of them I wish I never read.
What?
One of them is the Hidden Life of Trees. And I've been trying to get you to read that book. So what they basically tell you, so there was a German forester, right? And he was in charge of production of lumber in the German forest while maintaining the forest. They only selectively harvest the timber there. They don't do like what we do here in Clear Cut, right? So anyway, so he noticed some things, and he started in the 70s, the guy that wrote the book. And so they did studies and wrote many papers on everything they observed. And the thing that they determined is that trees really feel pain.
Oh.
Real pain.
Oh.
And they know how fast it travels through their system.
I can see why now you wish you never read that.
Right. And then, in fact, it's so great that, say, and this is almost quoting them, not exact, but kind of paraphrasing, right? That when the giraffes start eating the acacia trees in Africa, by the time the giraffe moves to the other side of the tree or to any of the other trees around, because they're all connected by the roots, right? That they'll release an allelopathic chemical that makes it bitter, so the giraffes can't eat it anymore.
And that's in a short amount of time.
Yeah, they say within 30 minutes.
Okay,
So
yeah.
it doesn't, like, we're close to the speed of light, the way the electricity runs through us. I don't know how fast. I don't know if they've ever measured it or not,
Mm-hmm.
but they've actually measured the chemical process in the plants that detect the pain. And it's like a third of an inch every second or something like that.
No kidding.
So it doesn't travel as fast as we do. And then when you know that approximately 55% of our DNA is plant DNA.
It doesn't surprise me. I know
Right.
biologically we do everything that a plant does. The best description I've ever seen or was given though is like our gut is like the root system.
Root system with the little philia inside of the gut. That's our roots.
Right.
Yes.
So
And the trees have their roots exterior. We have our roots on the interior.
exactly.
Right.
But largely we're the same makeup, need same minerals, oxygen, water, even to a large degree, a lot of the same bacteria functions.
Right.
Right. And people don't like eat. It blew my mind. I'm over here eating some yogurt one day and I look at the back and I'm thinking, this is like half of the same stuff that I put on lawns as a bioinoculant. Right.
Yeah.
Which blew my mind. And then have you ever heard of fermented plant extracts?
No, I don't. Fermented plant extract. So if it's fermented, it has a form of alcohol. So my guess is that it probably wouldn't be very good for a plant because
Okay.
of the alcohol level.
So actually, what I have found is that is not the truth. But it depends on how much, right? When you get a fermented plant extract, they use a specific type of bacteria,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever.
Which if it produces alcohol, if it ferments, it's an anaerobic. So plants need aerobic bacteria,
Okay,
not anaerobic.
actually, to some degree, just like we can eat fermented foods and it
Right.
helps us out,
Right.
right? It's having the same impact with plants.
I agree.
Okay.
Right.
Now we're not just gonna do it the old me way. Like we can't do it like we do with humic acid. You
Right.
can't dump 10 pounds of it on something and
Right.
expect good results. No, you break this stuff down 100 to 1, but then you get an amazing response from the plant. So what they say is with the fermented plant extract, say I want more grass to grow, then I could take a bunch of St. Augustine, right? And put it with a little bit of molasses and a specific bioinoculant and ferment it. And then I take that juice and take, 1 ounce to 100 ounces of water and go spray it back on my lawn. And it's going to really stimulate
What is
my
it?
St. Augustine.
What is it? But what does it do? Because if it's an organic, I don't, because the science is there that plants don't recognize organic. So it almost has to be feeding more microbes.
It
What
is.
does it do?
It is about because around every plant, and you probably know way more on this than I do. Every plant has specific sets of bacteria.
Right, right.
Right. So when you feed, you use one very specific type of bacteria to create this fermentation.
Right.
Right. You can't just brew it
So
like.
then what it is it's probably a food for another type of bacteria that really causes that other bacteria to just grow and explode. And that's more of a benefit to the plant. So what it is the stuff you're putting down feeds and creates more of the bacteria that the plant wants.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So it's another bacteria. So it's a different kind of food that another bacteria wants.
Right.
Because, the science is in that when alcohol, so people that pour beer or drinks on their trees or their plants are really killing them.
Mhm.
Because what happens is the alcohol actually affects the very root node, the very tip of the merisystemic cell. It stops or kills it.
Mm-hmm.
So that means wherever it touched alcohol, that root will no longer grow until the alcohol leaves the soil or leaves the plant or whatever. So that's why and fermentation is alcohol. But if you're actually using that fermentation and it's not enough to damage roots, then you're actually feeding other microbes that would do much better for the plant. And I could see that.
So here's a perfect example because I've been watching this for the last 2 years.
No, I get it.
Okay.
Right.
There's a product by a company called Organics, and they have this stuff called Bio 800.
Mhm.
It is kept refrigerated because if
Mhm.
it's out for 24 hours, it is toast. Especially in our heat, I wouldn't even.
It goes like it ferments or goes anaerobic or whatever.
Quick, right? And a part of what's in there is yeast. Now, there's also plenty of information showing that yeast in small amounts act like fungi.
Well,
In
yeah,
soil.
and they definitely help feed the plant and stuff. So the yeast isn't that
So-
bad of a deal for sure, right?
So what I've been watching is using this Bio 800 product. When I use it, super consistently as directed, which I was terrible about that in the beginning, right? I had the same mindset of average consumer. If a little
Right.
bit's good, more is better.
Right.
Blah, blah,
That's
blah.
a bad thing, especially in the herbicide world.
Or really in a lot of things. The only things that I think you can go buck wild crazy with is humic acid and molasses.
Because the more you
Right.
put down, the more it'll feed. So yeah.
Right. But using this this Bio 800, I could smell it because it doesn't say it's a fermented plant extract. They don't even say much about it. You can't even look up information on this. But after watching all these videos on a couple of these YouTube channels, and then knowing enough about biology and fermentation, I kind of took a whiff and I realized that's a FPE. That's a fermented plant extract that I'm buying. And it has to be refrigerated, otherwise it'll get worse and spoil.
It'll use all the oxygen, and the smell you're smelling is the lack of oxygen.
Well,
So-
when you first smell it, this specific stuff, and of course I'm weird, I'm always like telling everyone sniff it,
Yeah.
and everyone consistently says it smells like barbecue sauce.
Okay.
Okay. And I personally think it smells a little bit like soy sauce.
All right.
And it
So
smells
I have
so
a question for you. So, what kind of molasses do you think would be the best to use?
Oh man, I took notes when you told me.
Mhm.
I use food grade molasses. And even to this day, I tell all my customers or people who, follow me on Facebook, what have you, go buy the molasses from the grocery store.
Grocery store, yes, because the other has the sulfur in it and it kills all the bacteria except for the sulfur-loving bacteria.
Now, okay, what I've also seen though, and this is more in terms of lawns, not for trees. Okay. And I know your expertise is definitely all up in the trees, but I got to fix the lawns, And sulfur to some degree helps tremendously. Now, it's something that, I want to use it in sparing amounts.
Well, I think the sulfur, not to interrupt you, but I think the sulfur feeds the sulfur-loving bacteria that has that has to have sulfur to do a certain job that it does, that turns around and feeds the grass. So the minor amount of sulfur that you use will feed that bacteria.
Right.
So
And seeing that grass is a bacterial dominated
right.
thing versus a tree being
Which
a
is
fungal
fungal
dominated
dominated.
that's why we're having a different response.
Right.
Now, what I hate is the company, like I like to call them Ugreen, they put out all these freaking sulfur chips everywhere, and that's unnecessary. It's not effective.
Well,
and a
that
lot of
actually
times
that can
works
temporarily change the
backwards.
pH and cause other problems and stuff. Yeah, you got to just get the stuff from HEB or wherever you go buy your grocery stuff.
I've tested this. Okay, what I've found is that wholesome brand organic molasses continuously had a better, visible, faster result than any other molasses.
Can I tell you why?
Why?
So, this bacteria that they discovered or they proved existed only on a couple of plants. Now they prove it exists everywhere. And the study a peer-reviewed paper came in 2017. I think I talked to you about that, right?
You have.
So, what this paper said is, yes, it's no longer a myth. There is a bacteria that sits on leaves, of trees and grass in the bark fissures of trees. It's everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it fixes. It's a non-symbiotic atmosphere. It's a non-symbiotic standalone atmospheric fixing, nitrogen fixing bacteria, which means it can fix a nitrogen and not have to have a relationship with anything. It eats molasses because that's what bacteria does, right?
Yeah.
And when it eats the molasses, it fixes nitrogen and turns it into a chemical that the tree can use from the air. And it leaves it in the bark fissures wherever it's growing and on the leaves. And it feeds the tree through the bark and through the leaves all the nitrogen it can handle. The thing is when you spray the tree with the molasses, now you may have like a partial coverage of a so amount of percent. You get the coverage then becomes the population explodes all over the whole entire tree, creating more nitrogen available to the tree. So we could take a yellow chlorotic tree, spray the molasses on it, and it fixes the chlorosis sort of permanently.
Huh.
And yet previous 2016, it was just a myth. And anybody said, oh, and here's another one. So even with the ISA, the International Society of Arboriculture, I don't know if they've changed recently, but in the past, they said you can't effectively fertilize trees through bark and leaves. And so this study here says that you can, the study implies, because it can take fixed nitrogen and feed it to the tree directly by leaving it on the tree, and then the tree takes it in. So what's the difference between you putting nitrogen on the tree or the bacteria leaving the nitrogen on the tree itself? So that proves that any plant can take in nitrogen. But anyway, this bacteria is everywhere. It's on the grass. It's on everywhere. And the more you spray it.
Okay. True. However, the other thing to look at, I like to read the label, and as I'm sure you know, and I want to tell all of you, look, not everything that's on the label is what's going to happen. Okay.
Yes.
That's why I try everything and why we get weird and try different stuff and what have you. If you look at the label of a package of Wholesome Foods organic molasses, there is a higher nutrient content of everything than of any other brand. It's amazing.
Well, I agree with that. But remember, with organics, we're not feeding the tree those nutrients.
Yeah, but if you're giving them micronutrients, okay? If you're adding micronutrients and minerals,
right,
with the bacteria, then you're adding a mineral and a nutrient directly to the bacteria that you're going to feed, that's going to solubilize it and give it to the plant.
Yeah, it has to be solubilized by the bacteria first.
Right, I understand.
Okay, right.
But okay, there's, let's say a fixed amount of minerals in the soil.
Right.
So you're adding this minerals that's in this product already. Because second to Wholesome brand is Briar Rabbit blackstrap molasses. Because if you look at it, out of the other brands, like typically the most popular is Grandma's molasses. Everyone knows of Grandma's,
Yeah.
but the second best one I find is the Briar Rabbit purple label blackstrap, because it has the highest amount of iron and calcium and magnesium, second to the Wholesome Food brand. So if you're adding, potassium, calcium, magnesium, iron in that mineral with the sugar, the bacteria is getting it instantly.
Yeah, the bacteria is for sure. And we use Golden Barrel ourselves.
That's what I use a lot of too. I have a bunch of it in my garage right now.
Right. We use Golden Barrel simply because it's easier. We use hundreds of gallons of molasses a week.
Yeah.
So we're, our ratio for molasses is 200 to 1.
Uh-huh.
So for every 200 gallons of material which we make thousands of gallons a week, we use a gallon of molasses.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's some crazy stuff.
And it's, what's kind of beautiful to me is the more that we learn and the more we try to implement certain things, to me, usually it always goes back to simplicity, right?
Keep it simple. And so I call everything but humic acid and molasses boutique. However, I understand that molasses and humic acid, if you're not a commercial applicator, you cannot apply it correctly. So basically, humic acid and molasses is beyond the reach of homeowners. So I understand the importance of products that they can spread that are applied on dry or can be applied by the hose that are what I call boutique. To be able to give like microlife products, not endorsing them, but microlife products, something simple for the customer to be able to put out. Because if you make it so hard for the resident to put out, they're not going to.
Right.
I mean, it's really a mess to use that stuff.
Well,
it works.
I'd somewhat disagree. With the humic acid, I 100% agree, because putting out the massive amount of powder that we can, you can't as a homeowner. It's not happening. But you can do a decent amount of molasses. Mix that up, put it in a hose-in sprayer, go to town. You know, it's pretty simple. Now, if you're working on a big project, no, it's still going to be a pain in the butt.
Yeah,
but say for like your little lawn or something.
Well, if you got a little
flower
neighborhood
bed,
and you got like a 3,000 or 3,500 square feet of lawn, you know, that's easy.
simple,
Yeah,
right?
that's simple. But when you're talking about like, you know, we probably perform 20 to 25 jobs a day.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were using the products that weren't just basic products, so it's kind of like reading that book, The Alchemy of Air. They had to get everything down to a basic format in order for it to even work for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the more basic they could get it down to, the more money they actually made. So we have our system perfected, right? And for years, I mean, for 20 years, I've tried to set homeowners up with it. I don't know what the difference between the liquid humic acid and the powdered humic acid, the results aren't the same. I don't know if it's because there's such a small amount in the gallon size and there is in a pound. When you do the math, it's supposed to be about 1.33 pounds per gallon, but it doesn't play out that way. Or I don't know if it being liquid that it becomes anaerobic and kind of just messes the whole situation up. I mean, I don't know. It's just harder for the homeowner to be able to use that product.
I don't know either, because I've tested like liquid humic acids, and quite honestly, liquid humates by Medina always performed the best out of all the other liquids.
Right.
It did.
Well, it's because they're adding more different.
Well, if you open up a thing of that one, right, the Medina versus any other brand of humic acid, you were getting goopy, nasty stuff coming out of there that
Yeah,
works.
but if it doesn't smell like something you want to eat, you don't want to put it on your lawn.
Well, and it's
got to smell like something you want to eat, because that's aerobic.
I don't
That's
know
oxygen.
about that, okay? I'm not gonna fully agree with that, but when I open up a thing of the liquid humate by Medina, it does consistently always have a very clean smell.
Right.
Okay.
So
Whereas other brands, even other top-notch brands, honestly, it smells a little bit like ammonia.
like there's a particular kind of juice. We're not going to mention it, but you can get it when you buy certain kinds of plants.
Oh, I know about that juice.
Okay, stop. So,
God,
so here's the deal. Open up the juice, and you smell it, and it is a very nasty, very anaerobic smell. So if you're putting anything anaerobic in your yard, you're basically probably spreading some kind of disease or some kind of
Or you're
unhealthy
promoting a disease that could potentially already be there. It's just not woke up yet.
Right.
Man, we're going to go in a lot of different directions. So everyone, I'd encourage you, keep coming back to hear these conversations with Eric and I. I mean, we're talking 30 years of experience, and a guy who's, I don't know if y'all realize, you have to pay money sometimes to read these peer-reviewed papers.
It's $30 to $150 a paper, and we read hundreds.
To read a paper, okay? I got a soil book that's $100, and it's probably the most valuable book on nutrients that I have. That's one.
I think they changed something recently, because for years I used to try to buy papers. I couldn't buy them because I didn't have the educational level. But I guess now that they know that the papers are important, or they can actually sell the papers to people, that now we're allowed to get any paper we want.
Well, still, what I'm trying to tell y'all is we are gonna open up a huge can of knowledge here to share with everybody to try to help you have a better understanding of soil, trees, arboriculture, grass, the whole nine, and for you professionals out there to get a little bit of a taste of like some better knowledge, because there's a ton of knowledge out there, or a ton of information out there, and a lot of it's honestly, it's not the best. Okay, and we want to try to help you weed stuff out to get to the better information faster, so you can provide either better results at home or better results to your customers.
Right. We only put out peer reviewed. We only base our information on peer reviewed papers, not just one. We try to hit it from both ends of the polarity, because a lot of them will be negative and a lot of them will be for, and we place our opinion between the two, the negative and the positive papers on the subject.
And I bases it off of, I've tried it 50 times, and how did it really?
How about a real scientist doesn't, we know exactly what we do, but a real scientist will tell you that doesn't matter.
What?
It doesn't matter. Your experience doesn't matter. If you try something and it works, science doesn't believe that has anything to do with anything, because their thing is you can't reliably replicate that. You understand what I'm saying? So
but that's why I try it 50 times. Right. Not just once, because you can't always have that one off.
Right.
And we could go into quantum physics of the seer, whoever's watching is going to get the result they want.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is actually the double slit experiment that really matters.
So that's a whole thing. Anyways, guys, we've ran out of time. Thank you for watching us. I'd love to hear your comments, your feedback. Ask us some questions, because we could give you, hopefully some really good answers. And Eric, where can you be found, my man?
You can Google me, Eric Putnam, BCMA. I'm all over the internet.
And Clear Lake City's Arborist?
Clear Lake's Arborist.
Clear Lake's Arborist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the best arborists in Texas, Houston. You got tree problems? He's your tree whisperer. Check out me at hippiefertilizing.com. Y'all have a super groovy day. Peace. Hey everybody, it's AJ with Hippie Fertilizing. We are here to help fix your lawn. Does it currently look brown, dead, dry, patchy? We'll call a Hippie. We can help turn it around. And one of the best ways to do that is with our Hippie Juice Plus application to revitalize your soil, your turf, and help give you a lush green lawn you're looking for. Please fill out our contact form at hippiefertilizing.com, because nobody knows grass like a hippie. Peace.